CIPS interview is with Sabina Posadziejewski. Sabina is the project manager for the Alberta I.S.P Mentorship Program for Immigrants, and she is also president of Bodacious Excellence and offers services for corporate training, organizational excellence, management consulting, project management, change management, leadership management, and is also a certified organizational excellence specialist, certified CIPS member, an I.S.P and ITCP holder, and also holds an MBA. So thank you so much, Sabina, for taking your time to join me in this CIPS interview. Dig a little bit into your IT history, your experience as a CIPS member, and talking about the awesome Alberta I.S.P Mentorship Program that launched earlier this year. So to get started, maybe Sabina, you could just give us a brief summary about yourself and your IT career.
Great, thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you here today, Jonathan. It's different being on the other side of the chair of the table here. So I've been around for over 40 years in the IT profession, having pursued a computer science degree. And I've worked in both the public and the private sector, starting out first in the private sector and in a multitude of vertical markets, including typically from Alberta, oil and gas. Also in British Columbia, I worked in the lumber industry as an IT manager. But I also had the privilege earlier on in my career, when I graduated from University of Alberta, to come to Ottawa. And I worked for a company at the time called Quasar Systems, which turned into Cognos, which turned into an IBM company. And I was with them, at the starting stage of the fourth generation language era. And it was probably, I think, the most fun, the best part of my career, where I was able to travel and worked over in Europe for them for a period of time, and also throughout North America, delivering training and consulting services. So I've been really blessed with a rich blend of different opportunities. I've worked across the country, and across the continent, and working in the public sector for about 15 years is where I started out my career. Objective, as being a CIO, finally becoming a CIO, Chief Information Officer, was really enlightening. Right, working in the federal government for about 15 years for Western Economic Diversification, and now Prairies Development West, and then also moving there to Shared Services Canada, which was a piece of history of creating one central body to be responsible, one central ministry being responsible for the infrastructure, data center, email consolidation, kind of initiatives and mandate for the whole government of Canada. And I was appointed to be that regional executive director for the West, which, when we reflect, is over half the size of the country, including the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. And some amazing people I've met all across my journey, and that remain friends and contacts still today. And that is the power of being in this kind of industry that we are in, is that power of networking.
Yeah, well, that's a very impressive IT career, and CIPS Alberta is very lucky to have you as their project manager for their Alberta mentorship program. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how and why did you originally enter the IT fields? Kind of what was that spark to get you into IT, and I guess even what was IT like when you first entered IT?
That's been a deep question that I've had to consider how to respond to. So it gets quite personal, because that decision to pursue computer science came much earlier in my life compared to today. So we're talking back in high school, and I remember having a conversation with my father, who was, an immigrant after the war to Canada. And so we have to remember sort of the role of women at that time in life, you know, in the 70s and earlier. And he had said to me, well, you know, if you get married and it doesn't work, you don't want to have to wash dishes, so you better get an education. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's really disheartening, right? And, but it was probably a very good thing. And so I decided I had three options that I was considering because I was very much involved with voice and singing performance at the time. So it was between formal voice training, linguistics, because I love languages, and this new thing called computer science. And I chose the computer science for a couple of reasons. First of all, it looked like it would be something that was more realistic and would get me a job, and ideally with decent money, you know, at that time, and have a career with it. But also that my father was reminding me how my mom, who had passed away when I was very, very young, was one of the first IBM operators, you know, computer operators in the country. And my
Oh,
mother
wow.
had also been an immigrant after the war. And as I matured, I realized really she was one of the first computer operators, right? And
Yeah.
working with all those reams and stacks of computer cards, which I actually ended up learning how to code with at University of Alberta earlier on in the program. So it was that inspiration about, oh, I'm gonna do something my mom hadn't been able maybe to complete. And as you associate with now, it's about being a pioneer, earlier woman in IT that inspired me to try and follow in that path and see what could happen. So that's why I chose computer science. And it wasn't easy for me because I'm not one of these math brilliant kind of wizards, but I persevered. And I think that's one thing that stands out for a lot of IT professionals, how resilient we've learned to become with all the changes in technology and pervasiveness and challenges that that we are faced with, you know, on a day-to-day situation, right? And how it ebbs and flows as a career path.
Yeah,
So
well, that's an amazing
I
story.
saw.
And yeah, it's very cool how your mom was, you know, in IT, kind of started it, and you kind of followed her footsteps there. And IT especially, I think, was probably a little bit different when she was in there and what she was working on. And you've obviously seen how it's evolved quite a bit since then. So I think you clearly made the right decision in picking the IT career path, and you have the rich work history to show from it. And me working with you personally, you know, it's been a pleasure to work with you on the Alberta mentorship program. And I can see, you know, the very strong skills that you have both within IT, but also your personable skills, which are huge, especially for the mentorship program.
Thank you.
So on that note, I guess maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're currently working on.
So I actually went through an official retirement from the provincial government here in Alberta. And but you know, it's really difficult for those of us that go into retirement to just do it cold turkey. So I decided to set up my own shingle and calling it bodacious excellence, you know, after discussion with some, and some people could think, oh, that's kind of a strange word to be using. But you kind of alluded to it there in terms of my personality. People have told me how my personality can be bodacious, and also I'm so passionate about excellence and quality, you know, in the workplace, even though that has not been a formal part of my training and practice. But it is a reflection of how I have expectations of quality kind of work coming out and being delivered, and not just being stuck on a shelf collecting dust or being partially complete, trying to do the right thing at the right time, you know, and have it be successful, meeting the values expected and the outcomes required. So I did a few gigs there, and then the opportunity came up. I saw the posting for CIPS Alberta, seeking a project manager for this new mentorship program for newcomers to the province, and that it was funded by the Alberta government. And I thought, wow, this sounds so exciting and something different as well for me, right? Because it's not hard developing a solution of some kind, but it's developing something from scratch based on the soft side of the skills of IT. And I submitted my application and to the CIPS Alberta board and was successful. And it's been quite the learning experience to, first of all, go through the mechanics of what was originally written in the proposal for the funding and having to recreate a lot of things, but also the engagement with potential partners, the engagement with CIPS members, the requirement, to find mentors, and also how do we establish our feed for and referral feeds for mentees. And it's been excellent and eye-opening as to how much the IT profession has grown, where, 10, 15 years ago, CIPS was the only IT organization out there for professionals, right? The only one with professional designation, which remains to this day. But today there are so many other organizations with chapters, sections, groups, interest groups, meetup groups set up in different locations across the province. For example, I found out that there was an Edmonton tech community that had over 350 members or participants of primarily Nigerian background that had come to Edmonton alone. Like, that's unheard of. And then being associated with DAMA, the Data Association, and also with ISACA, being a CGIT holder, looking at all of those people, and how active those organizations are, amongst other ones, the CIO Association as well, both in Edmonton and Calgary here. So all of these different resources to reconnect with and try and establish partnerships with, but not only from the IT profession, but because of the nature of the project, it was trying to establish a relationship with the organizations that are helping with resettlement of refugees and of immigrants into the province upon their arrival. And, the challenges that individuals face when they first come to the country. And even as recent as a month ago, the advisory board that we established as part of our governance for the project had a discussion about, do we have to consider language, the use of English, caliber, right, level of English, as a prerequisite for the program. And we decided against it because part of the benefit of supporting a mentor or a mentee, is helping them practice their English in a work environment or in preparing for a job interview. And what can we do to help strengthen that? And also, there are options here to help them develop their English skills, different programming, and that's by the partnerships that we're establishing with other organizations.
Yeah, well, you building those relationships with all those other organizations and associations has been very impressive and insightful for me to see you kind of just being on the ground there and talking to all these various representatives from various associations, doing these speaking opportunities, telling them about CIPS and this mentorship program, and developing these relationships with other associations. It's amazing to see. And I guess on that association standpoint, if we kind of just backtrack just a tiny bit, would you be able to share a little bit about like when you became a CIPS member and why you became a CIPS member, and maybe talk a little bit about the value that you've obtained from being a member not only of CIPS, but other professional associations?
Great. That too is another interesting historical story. It was back in 1986 when I became a member, and it was when I returned to Canada from working over in Europe and in Scandinavia. And I was recruited to a position in Halifax, so the other end of the country. And this was at the time when Hibernia was still going to bring big promise, right, to the Atlantic provinces. And it was there in the organization I was with that I learned about CIPS from a member. And we maintained that relationship, you know, still after I moved, because shortly after Hibernia kind of collapsed that idea, and the division that I was brought to help with was dissolved. And so I go, enough of this, and I came back west, right? And I had to eat crow because I remember telling my father, I'm never coming back to this hick town again, right, to Edmonton. And I keep coming back, right? So I know this is my ground and my safe place here in Edmonton. And so 1986, I became a member, and right away I sought out CIPS in Alberta. It was an Edmonton section at the time, very active, very strong, and became a member and was very readily embraced by that community. The networking was just tremendous, right? And it became a very, very close-knit group of IT professionals and practitioners, you know, in the area. And with that opportunity to participate in national types of events and conferences. And I right away joined the Edmonton board, and it went through a number of positions, you know, VP marketing and membership, and was able to be the representative to the national board, which was exciting, and that expanded that further networking capability. And then so it was the networking was key, to be connected with people, and also the idea of professionalism. And this was the time when tremendous leaders in the CIPS organization were developing and then promoting and implementing the ISP program, right? So
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like you must be one of the first ISP holders, which
yeah.
launched in 1989. And for those that don't know, the ISP is Canada's only legally recognized IT designation to date. What do you recall when that ISP like first launched and how it came together?
I was pretty excited about it, and I wondered about how I would qualify because I couldn't yet be grandfathered in, because I was still, you know, sort of midway through my career, moving and reestablishing myself back in Canada, and the pride I felt because it was finally recognizing computer science, IT as a profession versus an art or a craft. You know, that we were serious, and the conversation about, well, an ISP, it's like a PN, you know, and that's still today how I compare it, except we just don't have that official right to practice, the only ones with that right to practice. And when the opportunity came, you know, with the ISP, there was more regulation around it, where the provinces had to regulate that designation. I was able to succeed the foundation people and lead that project to regulate the ISP as the first jurisdiction in North America to be recognized as a profession here from Alberta. So another Alberta first, you know, so it's still back in the 90s. And just tremendous pride in it. And I know that, and there was a lot of push during that time about, you know, advertising for an ISP, include that in your requirements. And I would do that. So as a leader, by example, showing that, and a number of other companies, you know, across the country, and also in government, you know, a number of us were putting out job ads that included that ISP designation as an asset. So my principle is that if I had two people exactly the same credentials, experience, education, but one had an ISP and the other didn't, I would opt for the ISP because I knew and understood the value and the ethical component that was expected of an ISP holder. right? And I knew that there was recourse available, you know, to the public should that IT professional, ISP holder, say, overrepresent themselves, or there would be some kind of conflict, you know, in the workplace that was a result of that person's work or whatever that person did, and there was an issue. Not that there have been many cases that have been brought forward, but it was still a sense of credibility, added sense of credibility. And I hope that that's what it brought for me as well. And then later when the ITCP came out as a result of the international recognition of the ISP, that further enhanced our credibility as IT professionals in the workplace, right? And the beauty too of the networking and the idea of professionalism is that capability to react and respond to changing technology over time. Some of us would maybe sit back and think it's just a cycle and just brand it as a new name with some new things in there, you know, like when the internet came out and when cloud, you know, client server technology and then cloud computing and okay, but then now there's all these other elements that we have to react to, you know, versus privacy, security. Now it's the artificial intelligence challenge, you know, that's impacting the way we can do business. But the beauty of having an IT professional is that we touch all aspects of an organization. We have that inside look.
Right. Oh yeah.
To go from end to end. And I don't think a lot of senior leaders from around the table really recognize that and recognize the value of an IT professional's exposure to the overarching organization, right?
Yeah.
And helping to establish business processes and understanding workflow, how can we improve that? And being able to do it right and truly be that strategic partner with the business. All right, because a lot of them still think of us as techies.
Yeah.
I'm still getting calls, you know, from my neighbors here. Can you come and help me with my computer? Yeah. It's like, okay, you know, but there's so much more to us and
Yeah.
so much more growing capability because we know how to learn, we know how to adapt, we know how to be resilient, and we're curious, right? And we're constant learners, and that is so critical in today's society with the changes and the challenges that we're having.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love your story so far. You know, I love how you came into IT and even your journey with CIPS and one of the first ISP holders, and then looking for fellow ISP holders to work with you. And then even what you talked about in terms of getting involved and developing new skills by getting involved. I think you mentioned you know, doing some marketing or whatever needs to be done outside your normal IT role. I think that's still today one of the big benefits of being a KISS member is that you get to be involved and try different things and learn new skills that you wouldn't in your normal day-to-day job. So I guess kind of moving ahead a little bit, you talk about a little bit of your later years at KIPS and what brought you to today and your current role as the project manager of the Alberta I.S.P. Mentorship Program.
I think for me, the later years, what I was grateful for is my membership status has changed over time because of my relocation to places that I've lived. And so I've become a member at large. When I lived in BC, in northern BC, in the small forestry town, but was still part of community, right? Which was great, and still being kept informed of changes, such that when I came back to Alberta, I was very easily re-engaged again into the community, which was good. And also seeing the changes, you know, it's been a bit disappointing for me to see how our membership has dropped off over the years, and now, but we've still been sustainable. We have focused on the professionalism aspect, on certification, and you know, and still have a very a well-recognized brand in the international space, right? As Canada's representative for IT professionalism in the world at different organizations. So it's really important now for each of the provinces, because of that governance change, you know, to try and encourage and promote more membership. And it's not easy, you know, because there's costs associated, but what's more important is being able to be in a position to advance your career, having your credibility recognized, and versus, you know, just staying within your own community, right? Within your own sort of space. There's so much more opportunity, I believe, when you start networking, when you start volunteering and open yourself up for more change in a professional capacity. So I'm seeing a shift in the interest and the take up again. And what I'm seeing, you know, not just from my recent mentorship program experience, but from looking at some of the other provinces as I become engaged, is CIPS has been an important part of attracting IT professionals into the country, right? Yes, it's been part of their access to immigration, perhaps, in some ways, but it's important for retention to occur, just like in a job place. How do we retain employers or employees, right? So how do we retain members? And we have to be stronger again at doing that, you know, and having more activities. And now that COVID is done, let's get out there and meet people in person. I know even for me, I've been, you know, working from home for quite a few years when I was with the federal government as well, you know, my home office. But even through COVID from home and now from home, it's like going out for a meeting in person, it can be a little bit anxiety around that, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to socialize in person with people, and we need to have more events around that, collaborative events. So so CIPS is changing. I think it's on the upswing, but it's going to take a lot more work and a lot more passion by members to participate to make it strong again. You know,
And I think it's been a challenge probably from a lot of other associations as well, especially when, you know, employers started paying less for various memberships. Really, the onus has come to the IT professional to join and pay out of their pocket often to join a professional association. So CIPS has really had to shift gears and focus on providing that additional value. And I think CIPS's rich history and connections are invaluable. Like CIPS is, I think, one of the few IT associations where we have not only that national network of provincial societies and members across Canada, but that big international network as well, being a member of IFIP and IP3, and then utilizing international tools like the Sophia Skills Framework, which we can talk briefly about. But yeah, no, there definitely has been a lot of changes over the last few years, a lot of positive changes. And things like using Sophia as a framework and CIPS skills assessments to help IT professionals assess their skills and plan their career. And then now utilizing it for mentorship in the CIPS Alberta Mentorship Program and supporting newcomers is really great to see. So, you know, for me personally, you know, I've been really excited about CIPS's growth and value the last few years, and how all CIPS's products are being tied together using our international connections and frameworks, and the benefits that members will be able to take advantage of it. So on that, like, maybe you can, I guess, can talk a little bit more about that Alberta Mentorship Program for Immigrants and how it started, and how it's been going so far, and some of the positive signs of creating important mentee-mentor relationships, and the value that it's been providing our members.
So the ICT mentorship program is based on grant application that was written prior to my time. And it was for a program that was about innovating the mentorship process, right? Bringing innovation in. So it took me a bit of time, you know, as anyone who starts a new project or program or new workplace to understand the business and what it was about. And that was my real introduction into Skills TX, the skills tools assessment that CIPS has adopted for members to conduct their own personal skills assessment. But what's important, more so than the tool, is the framework. And you've mentioned the acronym SOFIA, Skills Framework for the Information Age. And that has been fascinating to get my head wrapped around as well. And really to describe it as a common language, right? International language based on its development with representatives from a multitude of countries of what fundamental IT and business skills are, and providing like a level of competency or like maturity model, one may say, you know, from a level 1 to a level 7, where the 7 is where the knowledge and the capability is so ingrained, you know, it's all natural what one would do, right? And it's at level 6 and 7 where you see our senior leaders participating, you know, and it covers all the different domains in the IT space, plus those common areas as well of business knowledge, aptitude, and other core skills. So, and now what's really exciting is the anticipated release of SOFIA 9, version 9, coming in the fall, because from my bit of review of it, it's now encompassing the roles and the skills required for those roles that strengthen the cybersecurity capability, and also delving into machine learning, artificial intelligence, and into those new areas of technology space, you know, that we have to propel ourselves into and be aware of, be informed about, and be capable, you know, to practice in a proper ethical manner. And ethics is really key now as well in terms of, you know, it's great to get into Chat GPT, you know, the free one, but do you really want to put your name in there too? You know, because then it becomes part of the overarching global learning language model. And look at me using these cool new words, right? And this is part of my engagement, my attending presentations, my learning, my self-learning to understand better what these new areas are. So that mentorship is important. And in the program, so we had our first cohort established probably in late spring, early summer, you know, June, July, and with the mentor matching, where we based on the skills TX, the expectation was to do an automated matching with a bit of AI that's built into the tool, based on mentees' preferences and mentors' sort of preferences or what they have. And we were successful with a number of matches. There were overall about 44 participants in the program, split between mentors and mentees, and many of them are new members now of CIPS, but it's based on the engagement and the outreach that they found out about the program, and we're able to go to the CIPS Alberta website and follow the path to submit an expression of interest, right, is the way of getting into the program. And there are some key questions about the status of a mentee, because they must be a naturalized Canadian, a permanent resident, or protected person, right? People with work visas or student visas would not be considered accepted at this point in time, just due to the nature of the boundaries of the funding that was provided to us. The expectation is that this program, which is funded for 3 years, and we're now well into the start of year 2, and preparing for our intake of the new group. And we now have learned a lot in this last 2 to 3 months in terms of the need for a more formal onboarding process. Yes, delivery of an orientation. We have several key joint sessions, group sessions over a duration of 3 to 4 months. And also then there's an expectation of the mentorship relationship to meet and spend at least 6 hours together, 6 to 10 hours, say, over that 3-month period. So for me, I'm also a participating mentor. I meet with my mentee for 1 hour every 2 weeks. And if there's, and so we've set those boundaries as part of a commitment agreement form, right? And the mentee has to do a lot of work here too. Nothing is being spoon-fed or they're not being handheld, but it's to help them, identify what their goals and objectives are, because some may already be working, all right, but they're not advancing very much, or they're working in a job really below their capability, but at least they have a job. But we have others that have been in the country for about a year and still haven't landed anything. Others that are doing those jobs like an Uber driver or, cleaning or, just to get that Canadian experience or a Canadian reference. So how can we help them? And so far out of the pairs that have been established, we've already had some successes by mentors working with the mentees, looking at the skills profile, understanding the capability, reviewing the resumes, how to strengthen that resume, informing people how to go about doing a job search, and the importance of being strategic and applying critical thinking in that process. Not just take one canned resume and flip it out just because it's an IT job. You really have to think about what you're applying for and how do you distinguish yourself, because there are so many people, not just newcomers, that are all competing for the same work. And newcomers have a greater challenge. And it's also important to level set a newcomer with those that are, already in Canada for a long time. And remember our Canadian Charter of Rights, right? That be careful what you put in your resume so that there is no biased, unconscious bias being introduced into the selection process of your resume. Where you speak about sex and date of birth and maybe your origins and so forth, right? And your personal information. Keep that stuff out of it. So I'm preparing a webinar right now that'll be delivered next week about how to innovate your job preparation process using the new ChatGPT Coach Pilot, which has been modeled, from Skills TX, and how to use the Skills TX profile, how to decode a job ad to match to the skills, and what is the gap and what do you need to do to maybe raise yourself up to meet those expectations and requirements, right? But so it's an interesting
that technology has
journey.
been very cool that the mentors and mentees have been using. I'm familiar with the skill assessment tool, in particular from the CIPS certification program, which we've been using the skill assessment and the SOPHIA framework for quite a few years now. And CIPS certifications are aligned to SOPHIA. And I'm familiar with members assessing their skills and getting an output of the various skills that they have at the various levels. But with this mentorship program, what's really neat is that the mentors and mentees have been able to match using their skills gaps that the mentees have for future roles and matching them with mentors who have those skills to fulfill those skills gaps. So providing that matching using technology and SOPHIA and the skill assessment in order, and obviously AI technology in order to provide those nice matches and the best mentorship relationships possible based on those tools. Now, in addition to that, though, I would say it's kind of been also eye-opening is that you can have all the technology that you want or need, you think, but there is a much bigger level or work that is involved in order to help guide a mentorship relationship, as you and I have discovered. It's not just providing that simple match, but providing workshops and communication and support in order to help develop those relationships. And I guess basically what I'd like to ask you now is, from what you've seen and what you've heard from these workshops, like why do you think mentorship is so important? And for having that support system, whether it be from not only a mentor, but also an organization like CIPS helping support that mentorship relationship.
Oh, I think the mentorship is so important, really regardless what kind of career path we're on or what profession you're in. Because having a trusted individual, maybe more senior individual than you who's in that space, and it is a trusted relationship, it is private, it's confidential. It is a safe place for a mentor to speak or a mentee to speak about the challenges they're facing, either looking for work or in their current job place, how to deal with difficult situations, how should they navigate perhaps to a different kind of role, do help with the reflections of whether they're ready to move on or not, and what a mentor is doing is helping them think about what they should do. It's not giving them the answers. It's not doing the work for them, but it's being that safe sounding board, right, for a mentee. And it's really important, especially for IT people today, because of the changing of times, what's going on globally in the world and the stress of the world today, and the change of technology and the impact of technology on the world today, not just on business, but on your families, on yourself, on the economy, the way our living style has changed as well as based on technology. So it's really important to be able to have that safe place for people to be able to navigate their careers, right? For some of the other challenges, a mentor, or CIPS member as a mentor is not the ideal profession to be answering some of those challenges. But when it comes to helping an individual navigate through their career based on the challenges and changes of technology today, I think that's where the value add is provided, right? But it's still up to the mentee to do the work, right? In terms of the self-assessment, being critical and being open to feedback. Because they may not normally like what they're hearing, but hopefully in that safe space, they will take what they're hearing and soak it in and think about it, and then have an aha moment. Oh yeah, okay, I get it. What I've been doing is wrong or something, or maybe I should be doing things differently. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I guess we should probably talk about the next cohort and how new mentors and mentees can express their interests in the program. I guess the best place would probably be to visit the CIPS Alberta website, ab.cipscips.ca/mentorship. And that lists some information about the program, as well as the mentee and mentor requirements. Just briefly, some of those mentee requirements are that they must live in Alberta and have some post-secondary education or related work experience in IT, be a naturalized Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or protected person under the Canadian Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and legally allowed to work in Canada. On the mentor side, we're looking for mentors who are experienced Canadian IT professionals living in Alberta, and they are to complete the CIPS skills assessments, which will demonstrate that they have the requirement of Sophia Level 4 in business skills. And on the website, you can click that link to see exactly what that means for Sophia Level 4 in business skills. And if you're a CIPS member, you might already have that skills assessment report that you can refer to and see if you are eligible. And we are, again, looking have that expression of interest open. So if you are interested in participating, you can click that expression of interest button on that page. Again, that's ab.cips.ca/mentorship. Anything else that you'd like to add, Sabina, or any final thoughts?
I think it's really important to encourage your listeners, and should they be non-CIPS members, And please consider applying to help us out. We have an objective of serving 250 mentees over, the next 2 years. That's a lot. Will we meet that? I'm not too sure, but we need the mentors and we need the commitment and participation of both mentees and mentors throughout the program, and it is 3 to 4 months of supporting and giving back to community by your participation. So any questions, people are welcome to reach out to me as well. Sabina, Sabina @kips.ca. And I look forward to connecting with more new people. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sabina, for doing this interview. It was a pleasure. And we really appreciate all the hard work that you've been doing for this CIPS Alberta Mentorship Program. And it's great to see all these mentorship relationships being created. And I'm sure there's going to be many more to come. So thanks.
And for what it's worth, I know that several mentees are in their final stages of the job process. So
amazing. That's what you want to
cross
hear.
our fingers. Good. Thank you very much for your
Thanks,
time
Sabina.
and your interest.
All right, thanks. Take care.